following discussion is rooted mostly in fiction. My point in bringing up this topic is to shed light on this representation that I feel was not covered enough. As far as the real topic of dissociative identity disorder, I will be referring to what I've learned about the disorder from the DisociaDID YouTube channel. I will not be quoting Kaya or the DissociaDID system directly, so if I get anything wrong, it's entirely my fault. Link to their channel in the description. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 released in December 1st, 2017, and with the game came a slew of interesting characters. Some of the characters having a lot of depth and being actually interesting, and other characters that everyone hates. Today I'll be discussing one of those characters, or multiple characters that are intertwined and related with one another, and if you saw the title and thumbnail, I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this. I don't want things to get too confusing, so I'm going to start things off just talking about Mythra. Now, this can all be said about Mythra before the event that I'm going to be leading up to. Despite this being how she is before her traumatic event, her base personality is still a part of this representation. It's not going to line up 100% with how it would be in real life because a lot of this is metaphorical and Mythra is not a human and she's fictional. So when it comes to systems that happen to have dissociative identity disorder, alters are often differentiated from each other by types. The argument that I'm making is that Mythra's initial personality was the childlike alter. That's what it was supposed to represent anyway. Her personality does change and shift over time and into the next game, but that was what was intended by the way that she initially acted within the story of Torn of the Golden Country. She didn't mature and mellow out until a lot later. Okay. The first chronological depiction of Mythra is in the game Torn of the Golden Country, a little sidebar from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. In her earliest appearance, she's depicted as childlike. She's bratty, she's got a bit of a temper, she lacks all sorts of self-awareness. She tries to cook, Lord does she try, but there's just no hope for her. Even Adam, her own driver, treats her like a child. Now I point all this out to say that the writers were intentionally letting us know that Mythra, at this time, despite how she looks, is a child. She's young, she's new, she's fresh. So what happens to her in the story of the game is the equivalent of something crazy happening to a child, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Within the game Torn of the Golden Country, Mythra already has another half, a sibling in Malos. Now I believe Malos is meant to represent another alter, but because he's a separate character, I won't jump the gun on that just yet. Let's just talk about the two of them, their relationship. So Malos and Mythra, upon creation, were computer processors. Malos was designed to receive data, and Mythra is designed to disperse it, put it out there. Malos' core crystal was taken, and then he was awoken by a Malthus, a really bad dude. Don't want to mess with him. Don't touch him. Kinda gross. Because Amalthus was so gross, Malos came out with his gross tendencies, and he was so evil that he just decided that he was gonna wake up and destroy humanity. Now Mythra is woken up by this guy named Adam. No, not Adam. Adam. 2 Ds. Adam and Mythra's mission is to just stop Malos. They're the antithesis of each other. They're pretty much as strong as each other. They have completely different goals. Their powers come from literally the opposite element of each other, darkness and light. In the game story, they're even both addressed under the same moniker, the Aegis. The name was derived from some religious symbolism. It basically means shield, but the symbol that they use to depict the Aegis is a cross. That's a Bible reference for y'all at home. Now Malos is this dark entity, this antithesis to the Pneuma system that Mythra is a part of. He seems to be there specifically to cause problem for Mythra and the other alters involved. Now it is my belief that in the game Torn of the Golden Country, Malos is meant to symbolize Mythra's abuser, not necessarily the prosecutor in the system, but I do believe that he becomes the prosecutor to Mythra's system in the game Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now Malos' plan was interesting to say the least. Malos truly believed that his purpose in the world was to destroy humanity, to effectively end the world. But here's the thing, Malos didn't want to do it alone. He sees Mythra as his equal and he wants to destroy the world with her. So in all the crazy twisted things he does, having fun no less, Malos goes out of his way to set up so many situations to manipulate Mythra into using her power to the point that she goes out of control. When Mythra doesn't exert as much power as he wants her to, he does things like aiming a gun at her loved ones and then actually pulling the trigger. And other things, like constantly yelling at her to give it her all. Eventually Mythra can't take anymore, she has enough, and she goes all out. She ends up taking Malos out in the process. But because he's the villain and he's in the main game, that's only temporary. She does apparently wipe his memory though, so that's cool. Being manipulated, watching her friends die, seeing a place she once called home literally sink into the ocean, Mythra went through a lot. She couldn't handle all of it. Being as powerful as she is and going through the amount of emotions that she was going through, Mythra channeled all her energy into suppressing her identity within her core crystal. But in that process, she managed to make a protector for herself, someone who would exemplify the opposite of all of her insecurities, someone who'd be the person she wished she was in her stead. Doing this effectively put Mythra to sleep. Literally, she was asleep and she stayed that way for about 500 years. This identity that Mythra made for herself would go on to be known as Pyra. Now, as far as the rules go, Pyra and Mythra do not necessarily share memories, since one or the other could be sleeping while the other one is active. The two of them do, however, share experiences. Mythra's trauma is Pyra's trauma. Pyra might not have a clear picture of everything that happened, but she definitely knows how Mythra feels about it. Pyra is just about the opposite of childish when it comes to her personality. She approaches situations in a calm and collected manner. Somehow, she's an excellent cook, and she constantly goes out of her way to make an effort to express her feelings to her friends. Now, it sounds like a great deal for Mythra. Unfortunately, Pyra does come with her fair share of downsides. As far as self-defense goes, Pyra has nothing on Mythra. The source of Pyra's power is literally a dumbed down version of Mythra's power, and she's nowhere near as fast. She can't use Mythra's foresight. And with being Mythra's new constructed personality made to let her forget about her trauma, the unfortunate side effect of Pyra being, how do I say this on YouTube, ready to commit Sudoku. I don't want to make jokes about it, but I feel like it should be known, and I don't want this video taken down just because I wanted to use the proper term. At one point in the main game of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Malos has what he wants, and he's convinced them even more so that they lost and there's no point in doing anything that they're trying to do. But Rex, the main character, if you didn't know he was here, helps Pyra and Mythra to come to terms with their trauma, with everything that they blame themselves for. And in that moment of coming to terms with everything, they together form Numa. The closest thing I could find for an in-game explanation for how this worked is that Pyra and Mythra's emotions were in tune. They synced up, they fused. Now, this is actually representative of something that happens with real people with dissociative identity disorder. I do not know how common it is, but in some cases, people's personalities or alters can merge together into a new alter, which this sounds great because the point of the alters is to block your brain off from having to deal with or cope with the trauma, and instead it's these multiple identities that are there to support you so that you don't have to try to cope on your own. But if your alters started fusing together and their numbers started becoming less and less, then that would signify that there's a change, that something is happening where you don't need so many alters because you're coming to terms with something that may have happened to you in your past. And Numa is a great example of this. She even says immediately after forming,
"Apologies, Rex. Worry not. All is well. I am lost no longer."
Over the course of the game, Pyra and Mythra, both as individuals, both together and with all of their friends supporting them, grow as people and become something more, literally. As figurative as some parts of the story may be, I think this is excellent representation, especially compared to things like Split. I think this game has multiple great messages, but I think this is just one of them that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about. Now, I wanted to make this video a while ago. I wanted to go back and look at the DissociaDID videos to give myself a refresher on what I was going to be talking about, but unfortunately at the time that I went and looked, all of their videos were just gone. Apparently some legal stuff happened, but recently they've been re-uploading, and if you have not seen their content, I think you should. This isn't TikTok where people say they have dissociative identity disorder and you don't know if they're chasing clout or something. DissociaDID has been diagnosed. This is a real individual or a real system. They know what they're talking about for the most part. Not a professional, but they live through it. So yeah, so once again, link to their channel in the description. If you haven't played this game, I suggest you go play it. Really fun. Combat system's a little jank, but it's worth it, I think, for the story. With that, I hope you all have a good rest of your day or night, and see you in the next one.